After my marriage ended, I purchased a repossessed mountain property for $12,000. My plan was simple: renovate it personally and hopefully turn a profit. Heading up to inspect this newly acquired mountain residence with Miguel, my contractor, I suddenly slammed the brakes. Multiple vehicles occupy my driveway. The structure displays recent exterior coating. Children's bikes lie scattered throughout the yard. Approaching the entrance, bewilderment overtakes me. The door opens before I can announce my presence. A blonde-haired woman dressed in athletic wear stands before me, coffee cup in hand, examining me skeptically as if I'm peddling merchandise. "May I assist you?" she inquires with artificial politeness. I present my property documentation. "Ma'am, I own this place." She examines the paperwork briefly before actually chuckling. "Oh, honey, our residence here exceeds 12 months. Adverse possession regulations. Research them." The aroma of cooking food reaches me. "Inside my own kitchen, best wishes with that removal process," she says mockingly, shutting the door before me. I remain frozen, clutching documentation for a residence I cannot access. How would you respond if unauthorized occupants prevented your entry to your own property? This situation becomes absolutely wild. Allow me to rewind and explain my journey into this catastrophe. I'm Jake, 45 years old, and half a year back, I believed everything was settled. For 15 years, I'd operated a thriving contracting enterprise in Denver. Solid income, reliable customers, pleasant suburban residence with double garage space. Then Lisa, my wife, determined she required discovering herself alongside her yoga teacher, Brad, a top-notch sporting wellness expert who expressed himself solely through ancient Indian language and aromatic oil suggestions. The separation financially ruined me. Colorado operates under no-fault divorce laws, meaning Lisa's relationship with spiritual Brad held no legal significance. Assets divided equally. My residence, equipment, vehicle, everything, sacrificed to finance her enlightenment. Her journey with her awakened partner who likely couldn't replace a tire if his energy field required it. There I stood, 45 and financially depleted, residing in a compact apartment reeking of the former occupant's cigarette addiction. Questioning my life choices, that's when I discovered the county sale advertisement. Mountain dwelling, 2 acres, Woodland Park, Colorado. Opening offer, $8,000. The images appeared rough, deteriorating deck, shattered glass, vegetation exceeding mailbox height. Ideal for someone needing to reconstruct both a structure and their existence. I placed the sole offer. $12,000 later, I possessed a portion of Colorado wilderness. The land had belonged to Harold Brennan, 73, who'd resided there solo for 3 decades. County documentation indicated he'd ceased tax payments 3 years prior and passed without a will, no testament. No relatives, merely accumulating medical debt and a deserted cabin gradually reverting to wilderness. I followed proper procedures: title investigation, protection insurance, property maps completely legitimate. Here's an important legal detail. Purchasing through county tax sale provides clear ownership, eliminating all previous debts and disputes. The county had attempted finding Harold's family for 2 years before declaring abandonment and conducting the sale. My strategy was simple: evaluate the condition with Miguel, my most dependable contractor, then invest a year transforming this mountain disaster into a $60,000 sanctuary, sufficient profit to rebuild my existence. What I remained unaware of was someone else had developed their own strategies for my land. Enter Brenda Hutchkins, artificially blonde, constantly attired in premium athletic clothing, probably exceeding most individuals' monthly expenses. Brenda had mastered the extended deception, particularly targeting repossessed properties purchased by recently separated men. She'd executed this identical scheme across 3 additional Colorado counties. Brenda resided there alongside her jobless son, Tyler, whose primary abilities included recreational substance consumption and inventive property devastation, plus her daughter, Madison, 17, who'd been coached to generate tears instantly for maximum emotional effect. Here's Brenda's activity concerning my property for 8 months. Operating an unauthorized vacation rental named Mountain Getaway Retreat, 150 nightly. Consistently reserved throughout tourist periods, she'd generated over $6,000, leasing my residence to strangers while I finalized separation documents. She'd additionally submitted for residential tax reduction, declaring the cabin her main dwelling to evade property taxation. When executing a scheme, why not optimize the exploitation? But here's where Brenda committed her initial significant error, the unjust action eventually causing her downfall. 3 days preceding my visit, she'd grown overconfident. A municipal building examiner had appeared questioning unpermitted modifications. Rather than remaining inconspicuous, Brenda submitted a grievance with the county, asserting she was the established resident facing harassment from corporate powers attempting to seize her family residence. She'd essentially initiated conflict against me before I knew of her existence. The mountain drive should have provided therapeutic relief, curving paths through ponderosa pines. That sharp air filled with pine needle fragrance and hope. Miguel occupied the passenger seat, examining material inventories and complaining about timber costs. Boss, are you certain about this location? He questioned. County sales typically mean complete catastrophes. That's precisely why nobody else desired it, I responded, inhaling that fresh mountain atmosphere. That's why it belongs to me. Famous final statement. Because rounding that final bend, I discovered my deserted cabin was far from deserted. Vehicles in the access way, recent exterior coating on the structure, children's playthings distributed throughout the property, as if some family had resided there for months. As discovered, they had done so and positioned in my own access way, holding legal documentation, apparently meaningless to the woman who just closed the door before me. Miguel observes me as if I've lost reason. Boss, what just occurred? I'm uncertain, I respond, still observing the door. But we'll discover. I knock once more forcefully. The door opens, and now a man stands behind Brenda, thin, likely with the type of unkempt facial hair that announces, I lack employment, but I possess firm opinions about society. Ma'am, I state, attempting calmness, I require seeing documentation proving your right to occupy this space. Brenda displays that artificial pleasant smile again. Oh honey, I needn't prove anything to you. We're the occupants. You're the one trespassing. That's when she releases the initial bombshell. Tyler, contact the sheriff. This man is harassing us. Tyler, that must be the unkempt beard. Son retrieves his phone with this arrogant expression. Already, contacting. Mom, the metallic taste of alarm reaches my mouth as I comprehend how rapidly this escalates. 20 minutes later, a sheriff's vehicle appears, and my heart drops when I observe Deputy Rick Morrison exit. The way he walks directly to Brenda and provides her a familiar embrace reveals everything I need understanding about whose position he supports. Brenda, what's the issue here? He inquires, as if addressing his preferred niece. This man asserts he owns our residence, she states, and I swear she manages making her voice tremble by command. He's been threatening us, capturing images, making us feel vulnerable in our own residence. I advance with my documentation, maintaining my voice steady. Officer, I purchased this land at county sale 3 months ago. Here's my documentation. Deputy Rick barely examines my paperwork. Sir, even if you purchased this land, Colorado law is extremely clear regarding tenant protections. You cannot simply appear and harass people who've been residing somewhere. They're not tenants, I state, feeling my blood pressure increase. They're unauthorized occupants. That's a civil issue, he states with a dismissive gesture. You'll need proceeding through the courts. Then Brenda delivers her Academy Award execution. She begins crying, not just regular tears, but complete theatrical display, shoulders trembling, hands covering her face. The entire performance, I'm so frightened, she weeps. We've been residing here peacefully for over a year, and now this man appears asserting he owns our residence. What if he returns at night? What about my children? Deputy Rick's expression hardens. He observes me as if I just threatened burning down an orphanage. Sir, I'm going to require you departing this land immediately. Any additional contact with these occupants will be considered harassment, and I'll have no option but to arrest you. The scent of wood combustion from my own chimney drifts across the properties from the fireplace I legally own in the residence. I legally purchased while I'm being threatened with detention for trespassing on my own land. This is completely absurd, I tell Miguel as we drive back down the mountain. They're residing in my residence, and I'm the one receiving threats of arrest. But Brenda wasn't finished. While I was driving home in stunned silence, she was actively crafting her social media masterwork. By evening, she'd published on 3 neighborhood Facebook communities with a narrative that would make Shakespeare emotional. Urgent. Corporate property exploiter attempting to steal our family residence. A man appeared today, asserting he purchased our residence and demanding we depart immediately. We've been residing here over a year, maintaining the land after the previous owner passed. Now this predator desires throwing a single mother and her children onto the streets. Within 2 hours, 47 responses, most labeling me everything from a heartless capitalist to a danger to working families. Janet wrote, "This is precisely what's wrong with America. Wealthy people purchasing all the affordable housing." Mike added, "I hope this greedy person gets what's deserved. Leave that family alone." Reading these responses felt like being kicked in the stomach repeatedly. These individuals had never encountered me, knew nothing about the circumstances, but they'd already determined I was the villain in Brenda's fictional drama. That sleepless night, anger gradually replaced shock. I recalled something from my contractor training years back, in Colorado. Adverse possession requires 18 continuous years of occupation with proper legal assertions. Not the fantasy timeline Brenda was presenting. The following morning, I started making contacts. Attorney, county assessor, every business in Woodland Park inquiring about Brenda. By midday, I'd discovered 3 intriguing facts about my tenant. First, she owed money to half the local establishments. Second, she'd attempted this identical scheme in Jefferson County 2 years earlier. Third, despite asserting over a year of occupation, her utility connections only dated back 8 months. The pleasant scent of revenge was beginning to mix with that mountain pine atmosphere. The pursuit was officially initiated. 3 days later, Brenda unleashed chaos. I'm drinking morning coffee in my studio apartment when my phone erupts message after message from unknown contacts. Saw you on the news. You piece of hope, you're proud, terrorizing families. Wealthy, destroying our community. I activate channel 9, and there she appears. Brenda, standing before my cabin. Appearing exhausted and desperate, teenage daughter Madison clutches a handcrafted sign. Don't let them make us homeless. The reporter, some kid who probably graduated journalism school yesterday's, accepting every statement. This is Sarah Collins from Woodland Park, where a local family faces removal from their residence of over a year. Brenda Hutchkins states a corporate investor purchased their land and desires them gone. Brenda dabs her eyes. We maintained Harold when he was passing. We maintained this land, paid for repairs ourselves. Now, this man appears with paperwork desiring to throw my children on the streets. The camera displays Tyler hammering something on the porch, probably his initial honest labor in months, while Madison produces perfect tears on demand. The family initiated a GoFundMe for legal expenses. Sarah continues. They're requesting $10,000 to fight this predatory landlord. I nearly threw my cup at the screen, but anger sharpened my concentration. Rather than self-pity, I spent the afternoon investigating Brenda's background. That's when I found Rosemary Reed, former San Francisco corporate fraud attorney, exhausted and relocated to the mountains. Now she operated a small practice from her residential office. The fragrance of jasmine tea filling her living space as she examined my documentation. Textbook fraud, she stated, distributing papers across her coffee table. But Brenda's intelligent, perfect victim, execution, and Sheriff Morrison's either corrupt or clueless. Can we prove she's lying? Rosemary smiled. Jake, I've tracked scammers for 20 years. They always leave traces. Within days, we'd mapped Brenda's entire operation, Jefferson, Boulder, and Larimer counties. Same pattern, every instance. Target separated, men purchasing repossessions. Assert caretaker status, perform victim when confronted. Then we found her actual residency, double-wide trailer, 40 miles away. Current taxation, active utilities, fully occupied. She'd been residing there while operating my cabin as her personal vacation rental goldmine. The breakthrough came at Murphy's Hardware downtown. Owner Frank, with grease permanently marking his fingernails, grimaced at Brenda's name. That woman purchased 300 of supplies 6 months ago. Paint. Lumber asserted she'd pay when her insurance settlement arrived. Let me guess, no payment. 0. Then last month, her son arrives, same narrative. 200 more for emergency roof repairs. Frank displayed receipts. Sage green paint covering my cabin, lumber for my deck repairs. Even those garden ornaments lined up like tiny criminals on my porch. But the actual treasure came from Lisa Rodriguez at Mountain View Restaurant. The bitter scent of burnt coffee hung in the atmosphere as she described Brenda's charity deception. She'd arrive twice weekly, asserting her dying mother needed free food. We provided her maybe 200 worth of meals over 3 months. What occurred? My cousin spotted her purchasing steaks at Walmart with food stamps the same day she asserted her family was starving. When I confronted her, she turned hostile. Said we discriminated against single mothers. I was connecting details. Brenda didn't just squatchy, systematically scammed entire communities. Local establishments, kind neighbors, anyone with compassion and loose finances. Here's where Brenda made her fatal error. All that GoFundMe money, charity meals, and unreported vacation rental income. Clun declared to the IRS. But then she surprised me with her next action. That evening, I received a contact from my bank. Someone had submitted a fraudulent assertion against my account, stating I'd written invalid checks for land I didn't own. Brenda was attempting to freeze my assets while I fought her in court. Intelligent, vicious, but too could perform dirty. I spent that night researching Colorado tax regulations, and I learned something beautiful. When someone asserts a property as their main residence for tax purposes, like Brenda's residential exemption, but actually resides elsewhere, it's felony tax fraud. 5 years minimum, up to 20 if the amount exceeds $10,000. Brenda had been asserting my cabin as her legal residence to avoid property taxation, while maintaining her trailer as her actual residence. Double residency fraud, unreported rental income, false charity assertions. She'd constructed herself a house of cards. The following morning, I made 3 contacts. First to the IRS fraud hotline. Second, to the Colorado Department of Revenue. Third, to Channel 9 News. Hi, Sarah, I stated when the rookie reporter answered. This is Jake, the predatory landlord from yesterday's coverage. I've got some documentation about Brenda Hutchkins you might find interesting. The pleasant mountain atmosphere was beginning to smell like justice. By midday, Brenda's GoFundMe had been suspended for fraudulent assertions, and a very serious-appearing woman from the state tax department was driving up that gravel path to my cabin. The hunter was about to become the hunted. 2 weeks later, Brenda decided to burn everything down. I'm examining contractor proposals when Miguel contacts. Voice tight with rage. Boss, get up here now. Bring a camera. The drive felt endless. When I arrived, my heart stopped, every south-facing window shattered. Front door hanging crooked, Tyler sitting on my porch, drinking beer as if he owned the place. What occurred here? Tyler looked up with bloodshot eyes and a cocky expression. Oh, hey landlord. Had some structural problems, safety hazards, did some emergency repairs. The pleasant mountain atmosphere reeked of marijuana, and broken glass crunched under my boots as I surveyed the carnage. Inside was apocalyptic. Holes punched through every wall. Kitchen sink removed. Water spreading across hardwood like infection. Tyler had taken a sledgehammer to my dreams. Mom's documenting everything, Tyler stated, following me inside. Going to display how you let this dump fall apart. Real slumlord behavior. Hidden cameras lurked in corners, positioned to make vandalism appear like neglect. Brenda emerged from the bedroom, designer workout clothes spotless despite the chaos. Jake, perfect timing. We're documenting all the safety problems you've ignored as property owner. She filmed me with her phone. This man allowed his property to deteriorate dangerously. We've been forced to make emergency repairs to protect my children. The audacity was breathtaking. She was recording her son's destruction and blaming me. But I'd learned my hidden security system had captured 2 weeks of footage. Every punch Tyler threw, every window shattered, every pipe destroyed, all in crystal clear HD. Brenda, are you familiar with Colorado Revised Statute, the 18th of April 501? Her confidence flickered. What? Criminal mischief in the first degree. Property damage exceeding $2,000. Felony territory. I displayed them security footage. Tyler swinging a sledgehammer with meth-fueled enthusiasm. 12 hours of video. Every act of vandalism, time-stamped and dates. Brenda went pale under her makeup. $15,000 in damage so far, I continued, but here's the beauty, you filmed yourselves doing it. Then my phone buzzed. Drop the case, or this gets worse. We know where you live. I screenshot the threat and contacted Rosemary immediately. But while documenting Tyler's rampage, I made an incredible discovery. When he'd sledgehammered the bedroom wall, he'd exposed a hidden cavity. Inside, wrapped in plastic bags, were dozens of documents, medical records, insurance papers, legal forms, all belonging to Harold Brennan, the previous owner. As I distributed them across my kitchen table that evening, the pieces clicked into position. Harold hadn't just passed and left the property abandoned. He'd been systematically isolated and financially abused. The documentation told a horrifying narrative. Brenda had inserted herself into Harold's existence as his caretaker. During his final year, power of attorney forms with questionable signatures. Bank account changes, routing his social security to accounts she controlled. Medical records displaying he'd been increasingly confused and dependent. But the bombshell was a life insurance policy, $40,000, with Brenda listed as beneficiary. The signature looked nothing like Harold's shaky handwriting on earlier documents. I contacted Rosemary at midnight. Jake, what you're describing isn't squatting, she stated, her voice grave. It's elder abuse, potentially murdered. Harold's medical records display he was healthy for his age until Brenda became his caretaker. Then rapid decline, suspicious medication changes, and sudden death. The insurance company would never have paid out if they'd known she was residing in his residence, controlling his finances. My blood turned to ice water. This wasn't about property anymore. Brenda hadn't just stolen my residence sheet, potentially killed a man for it. The following morning brought a new escalation. I found my truck vandalized in my apartment parking lot. Predator spray-painted across the side in neon orange. The acrid chemical scent burned my nostrils. A note under the wiper. Final warning. But instead of intimidating me, it crystallized everything. Brenda was desperate because she knew I was getting close to something bigger than squatting. I contacted the FBI field office in Denver. Special Agent Martinez, came the sharp voice. Agent Martinez, I need to report suspected elder abuse, insurance fraud, and possible homicide. 3 hours later, she sat in my studio apartment examining Harold's hidden documentation. The scent of her black coffee mixed with lingering paint fumes from my truck outside. Mr. Jake, what started as property dispute has become a potential murder investigation. If Harold Brennan was poisoned or neglected to death and Brenda collected life insurance while residing in his residence, we're examining federal charges carrying life sentences. What's our next action? We build an airtight case. Every threat she makes, every lie she tells, every piece of evidence she attempts to destroy just strengthens our position. But from now on, no direct contact. We handle everything. As Agent Martinez departed with copies of Harold's documentation, I realized the stakes had exploded beyond my imagination. I wasn't just fighting for my property anymore. I was fighting for justice for a murdered elderly man who passed alone, betrayed by someone he'd trusted to care for him. The mountain atmosphere tasted like vengeance now. The contact came at 2 a.m., 3 days after the FBI took Harold's documentation. Jake, it's Agent Martinez. We need to meet now and bring everything you have on Brenda Hutchins. The urgency in her voice sent ice through my veins. We met at an all-night truck stop outside Colorado Springs. the scent of diesel fumes and burnt coffee, creating an appropriately grim atmosphere for what she was about to tell me. Martinez slid a manila folder across the sticky Formica table. Harold Brennan wasn't just murdered, Jake. He was one of at least 4 elderly men Brenda systematically killed for their insurance money. The initial photo hit me like a punch to the gut. Harold, from 18 months ago, healthy, smiling, standing before my cabin with a fishing rod. The second photo, taken weeks before his death, displayed a skeletal ghost of the same man, hollow-eyed and barely recognizable. Serial killer. The words felt surreal in this fluorescent-lit wasteland. Financial serial killer with a very specific hunting pattern. Elderly men, isolated, substantial assets, no close family. Martinez's voice carried the weight of someone who'd witnessed too much evil. She didn't stumble onto your property by accident. She murdered Harold specifically to steal it. My hands shook as she walked me through the timeline. Brenda had encountered Harold at a senior center grief support group. She'd posed as a widow seeking comfort while actually shopping for victims. She targeted him like a predator selecting prey. Classic isolation technique. Martinez continued. Befriended him, became indispensable, then gradually cut him off from everyone else, changed his phone contact, intercepted mail, convinced him his family was attempting to rob him. The medical records painted a horrific picture. Harold's decline had been systematic, unexplained weight loss, confusion, weakness. His physician had noted concerns about medication management, but Brenda always had plausible explanations. Slow-acting poison. I questioned, my stomach churning. We won't know until exhumation, but the pattern fits. Arsenic probably is easy to obtain, hard to detect. Appears like natural aging. But here's where my blood truly boiled. Harold's life insurance policy was worth $40,000, but it contained a cohabitation clause. Payment would be voided if the beneficiary resided with the deceased. Standard protection against exactly this type of fraud. She collected the money anyway, used Harold's mail to receive the check. Forged documentation asserting she resided elsewhere. Federal mail fraud, insurance fraud, tax evasion. Martinez's jaw tightened. She's been living off his murder for over a year while operating your cabin as her personal vacation rental. Then came the bombshell that changed everything. Jake. Harold has a nephew in Florida, Fletcher Brennan. He's been hunting Brenda for 2 years, building a murder case since before Harold passed. Fletcher had been attempting to reach his uncle when phone contacts stopped being returned. He'd hired private investigators, tracked Harold's financial records, even discovered security footage from the senior center displaying Brenda specifically approaching elderly men. Fletcher documented 3 other suspicious deaths in different states. Same pattern, lonely elderly men. Sudden health decline after Brenda entered their existences, mysterious deaths, insurance payouts. The truck stop's fluorescent lights flickered overhead as the magnitude hit me. I wasn't fighting a squatter or even a simple fraudster. I was the accidental witness who'd stumbled into a serial killer's carefully constructed existence. She's killed 4 men that we know of, Martinez stated quietly. Made hundreds of thousands of dollars from their murders. Your property purchase threatened her entire operation. The taste of metal filled my mouth as adrenaline spiked. What occurs now? Now we have her cornered. Every threat she's made, every piece of evidence she's destroyed, every lie she's told, it all supports premeditated murder charges. Martinez smiled grimly. She doesn't know it yet, but she just graduated from property fraud to death row. Outside, a semi-truck's engine roared to life, but all I could hear was the sound of justice finally grinding into motion. The game had completely changed, and this time, I was holding all the cards. The following morning, my studio apartment became FBI headquarters. Agent Martinez arrived with Fletcher Brennan, Harold's nephew from Florida, and enough evidence boxers to build a small fort. Fletcher was a thin, intense man in his 50s with the hollow appearance of someone who'd been carrying grief and rage for 2 years. She killed my uncle, he stated simply, shaking my hand with a grip that could crush walnuts, and she's going to pay for it. The scent of black coffee and righteous anger filled my cramped living space as we distributed the evidence. Financial records, medical documentation, surveillance photos, phone logs. Fletcher had been building this case like a man possessed. Harold was the only family I had remaining after my parents passed. Fletcher explained, his voice tight with controlled emotion. When he stopped returning my contacts, I knew something was wrong. Harold never missed our Sunday phone contacts for 30 years. Martinez laid out the master plan like a general preparing for war. We're going to let Brenda think she's winning while we build an unbreakable federal case, she stated. Every action she makes from now on just provides us more evidence. The strategy was beautiful in its simplicity. 3 parallel investigations operating simultaneously. The FBI pursuing federal murder and fraud charges. The IRS pursuing tax evasion, and the insurance company filing their own criminal complaint for the fraudulent $40,000 payout. She can't fight all of us, Martinez explained. Even if she beats one charge, the others will destroy her. Fletcher opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder that made my stomach turn. Photos of Harold's final months, secretly taken by a neighbor who'd grown suspicious. The progression from healthy 73-year-old to skeletal wreck was documented in horrifying detail. Mrs. Reese next door started capturing images when she noticed Harold's sudden weight loss. Fletcher stated she'd known him for 15 years and watched Brenda isolate him from everyone who cared about him. The timeline was damning. Harold's decline had accelerated rapidly after Brenda moved in as his caretaker. Bank withdrawals increased, social contacts disappeared, and his health deteriorated with suspicious consistency. But the smoking gun was Harold's handwriting. Fletcher displayed samples spanning 2 years. Early documentation displayed Harold's neat, steady signature, later documentation power of attorney forms, bank changes. Insurance beneficiary updates displayed increasingly shaky writing that eventually looked nothing like Harold's hand. She was forging his signature while probably poisoning him, I stated, the pieces clicking into position. Gets better, Martinez added. The insurance company has security footage of Brenda cashing the death benefit check. She used Harold's ID and forged documentation, asserting he'd moved to Arizona before passing. Now came the technical details that would seal Brenda's fate. When you commit mail fraud by using someone else's address to receive fraudulent payments, each piece of mail becomes a separate federal felony. Brenda had been using Harold's address for over a year after his death. 47 separate mail fraud charges, Martinez stated with satisfaction. Each one carries up to 20 years. She's examining life without parole, even without the murder conviction. The IRS angle was equally devastating. Brenda had asserted the cabin as her main residence for tax purposes while actually residing in her trailer. She'd also failed to report the insurance money, the unauthorized vacation rental income, and the various charity schemes she'd operated throughout the community. Tax evasion on $18,000 in unreported income, Martinez continued, plus penalties and interest. She owes the government about $30,000. Fletcher had prepared the most damaging evidence of all, a victim impact statement that would be read at Brenda's eventual sentencing. Harold's final months, his isolation, his confusion, as someone he trusted slowly murdered him. I've been waiting 2 years to observe her in handcuffs, Fletcher stated quietly. Harold was a good man who deserved better than passing alone and afraid. The plan was to let Brenda continue escalating while we documented everything. Her threats, her property destruction, her lies to mediate all supported the federal case for obstruction of justice and witness intimidation. She's digging her own grave, Martinez stated. Every crime she commits now just makes our job easier. We established a communication protocol. I'd continue acting like a frustrated property owner fighting squatters while the FBI worked behind the scenes. Any threats or contact from Brenda got immediately reported and documented. The beautiful part was how her own arrogance would be her downfall. Brenda thought she was dealing with a naive separated contractor who'd eventually give up and walk away. She had no idea she was being hunted by federal agents with unlimited resources and bottomless patience. The trap is established, Martinez stated as she packed up the evidence boxes. Now we wait for her to walk into it. Fletcher shook my hand again before departing. Thank you for not giving up, Jake. Harold's spirit can finally rest when this monster is behind bars. That night, I sat in my apartment observing Harold's photos, thinking about an elderly man who passed alone because he trusted the wrong person. The mountain atmosphere outside smelled like pine and possibility. Justice was coming for Brenda Hut. She just didn't know it yet. A week later, Brenda completely lost her mind. I'm sitting in my apartment examining the FBI's game plan when my phone erupts with notifications, not text messages this time. Full social media warfare. Brenda had created fake Facebook accounts, fake Twitter profiles, even fake Yelp reviews targeting my contracting business. Each publication painted me as a racist slumlord who specifically targeted single mothers and minorities. Jake Morrison Construction destroys families. Read one publication with a doctored photo of me that made me appear like a serial killer. This predator purchased our residence just to remove a disabled single mother and her special needs children. The responses were vicious. Individuals I'd never encountered calling for my business to be boycotted, my contractor's license revoked, even suggesting I should be dealt with personally. But Brenda's biggest mistake was dragging my ex-wife into it. She'd somehow found Lisa's Instagram and published responses asserting I was an abuser who'd left my family homeless. Lisa, to her credit, immediately contacted to warn me. Jake, some crazy woman is publishing lies about you all over my social media, Lisa stated, sounding genuinely concerned for the first time since our separation. She's stating you beat me and stole my residence. It's complicated, I told her, but don't engage with her. She's dangerous. The scent of desperation was practically radiating from Brenda's increasingly unhinged behavior. Agent Martinez had warned me this would anchor-cornered predators always lash out wildly before they're captured. Then Tyler escalated to physical intimidation. I'm departing my apartment for a job site when I find him leaning against my truck, smoking a cigarette with the casual menace of someone who's spent time in county lockup. Jake, correct, he states, flicking ash onto my windshield. My mom desired me to deliver a message. The morning atmosphere carried the acrid scent of his cheap tobacco, mixed with the sour stench of unwashed clothes and poor life choices. She's willing to make a deal, Tyler continued. Split the insurance money Harold left behind, 20 grand each, and we all walk away happy. I almost laughed. What insurance money? Don't perform ignorant. Mom found Harold's policy papers. 40,000, we'll cut you in for half if you drop the removal. The kid had no idea he was confessing to federal crimes while I recorded everything on my phone. Extortion, conspiracy to commit fraud, and accessory to murder all in one convenient package. Tyler, I stated calmly, I'm not interested in your mother's blood money. His expression darkened. That's a mistake, Jake. Accidents occur to individuals who don't know when to quit. 2 days later, my truck tires were slashed. The morning after that, someone threw a brick through my apartment window with a note tied to it. Final warning. But Brenda's desperation led to her most catastrophic error yet. Agent Martinez contacted me Thursday morning, barely containing her excitement. Jake, Brenda just contacted the insurance company directly. She's attempting to file a second assertion on Harold's policy, asserting there was a clerical error in the original payout amount. She's attempting to double dip. Gets better. She contacted from Harold's old phone. Contact the one she's been using to maintain his utilities and receive his mail. She identified herself as Harold's estate administrator and demanded they reprocess his assertion. The recording of that phone contact would eventually be performed in federal court. Brenda, in her own voice, committing mail fraud, insurance fraud, and identity theft, while the insurance company's security department recorded every word. She also made a critical slip. Martinez continued. She referenced specific details about Harold's final days that only someone residing with him would know, details that contradict her sworn statements about residing elsewhere. That afternoon, Tyler made his own fatal mistake. He broke into my apartment while I was at work, probably seeking documentation he could steal or destroy. What he found instead was the FBI surveillance equipment monitoring my place. The break-in was captured in high-definition video, displaying Tyler searching through my papers, photographing my legal documentation, and stealing my laptop. Federal breaking and entering. Theft of evidence in a federal investigation. Obstruction of justice, they're falling apart. Martinez told me that evening as we examined the footage. Brenda's getting sloppy because she knows we're closing in. Tyler's making mistakes because he's high half the time and stupid the rest. But the final nail in their coffin came from an unexpected source. Madison, Brenda's teenage daughter. She'd been watching her mother's increasingly erratic behavior and her brother's criminal escalation, and something inside her finally broke. She appeared at the sheriff's department requesting to speak to someone about her family. She desires to testify against her mother, Martinez explained. Apparently, she's known about the murders for months. Brenda bragged about taking care of Harold and other elderly men. She's willing to wear a wire. The mountain atmosphere that night tasted like victory was finally within reach. After months of Brenda's psychological warfare, her own family was turning against her. How long until we act? I questioned. Martinez smiled. Town hall meeting tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. Be there. The trap was finally ready to spring. The day before the town hall, Brenda went completely nuclear. I woke up to find every tire on my truck slashed, my apartment mailbox stuffed with legal papers, and 17 voicemails from a lawyer asserting to represent Miss Hutchkins in her harassment case against you. The lawyer, some bot named Dennis Kowalski, who advertised on Busbench, filed a restraining order asserting I'd been stalking and terrorizing his client. The scent of cheap cologne and desperation practically wafted off the legal documentation. My client has been forced to reside in fear. The filing read, while this predatory landlord uses intimidation tactics to force a disabled single mother from her longtime family residence. Disabled? This was news to me. But Brenda's masterpiece was the medical documentation she'd somehow manufactured. Physician's notes asserting she suffered from PTSD, anxiety, and a heart condition, all supposedly triggered by my aggressive harassment. She's skilled, Agent Martinez stated when I forwarded her the restraining order. Probably paid some quack physician to write these up, but it's also evidence of fraud, so she just provided us another federal charge. Then Brenda made her most desperate play yet. Tyler appeared at my apartment that afternoon with Madison in tow, but instead of his usual thuggish intimidation, he appeared genuinely scared. Jake, we need to talk, he stated, glancing nervously over his shoulder. Mom's lost it. She's talking about burning down the cabin and asserting you did it for insurance fraud. Madison, pale and shaking, stepped forward. She's been planning it for days. She thinks if the property gets destroyed, all the legal problems go away. The acrid scent of fierce sweat hung in the atmosphere between us. These kids had finally realized their mother wasn't just a scammer, she was dangerous. There's more, Tyler continued. She's been talking to some guys she encountered in Jefferson County. Bikers who do favors for money. She desires them too. He swallowed hard. She desires them to make sure you don't make it to the town hall meeting. My blood turned to ice water. Brenda was planning to have me killed. I immediately contacted Agent Martinez, who arrived within minutes with a full tactical team. The FBI had been monitoring Brenda's communications, and they'd already intercepted her contacts to the biker crew. We picked up 3 members of the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club an hour ago, Martinez told us. They were heading up here with gasoline and weapons. Brenda paid them $5,000 to handle her landlord problem permanently. Madison started crying. I'm so sorry. I attempted to stop her, but she stated you were going to destroy our family. She stated killing Harold was just the beginning, and she'd do whatever it took to protect us. That's when the final piece of Brenda's twisted puzzle fell into position. Tyler pulled out his phone and displayed his text messages from his mother over the past week. Screenshots of her planning my murder, discussing how to make it appear like an accident, even researching my daily routines to find the perfect opportunity. She's been following you, Tyler stated, capturing images of where you reside, where you work, what time you depart in the morning. She's got a whole file on you. But the most damning evidence was a voice recording Madison had made secretly. Brenda, high on methamphetamine and drunk on her own sociopathy, bragging about murdering Harold. That elderly fool never saw it coming. Brenda's voice crackled through the phone speaker. A little antifreeze in his morning coffee every day for 3 months. He thought he was getting the flu. Stupid person signed over everything before he died. Agent Martinez's jaw tightened. That's a confession to first-degree murder. The recording continued with Brenda describing how she'd researched other potential victims, how she'd perfected her technique with previous elderly men, and how she planned to continue the murders until she had enough money to retire somewhere warm. Jake was supposed to be easy, Brenda's voice continued. Separated guys usually give up when you make their existences miserable enough, but this one won't quit, so he's got to disappear permanently. As we listened to this monster casually discussing my execution, the mountain atmosphere outside seemed to grow thinner. This wasn't just about property fraud anymore. This was about stopping a serial killer who'd graduated to contract murder. The town hall meeting is still occurring tomorrow night, Martinez announced. But now it's not just about getting Brenda to confess to fraud. We're getting her to confess to planning your murder. She observed Tyler and Madison with something approaching sympathy. You two just saved Jake's existence and probably prevented your mother from becoming a full-scale domestic terrorist. That evening, I sat in my apartment under FBI protection, thinking about how close I'd come to becoming Brenda's 5th victim. The scent of fear sweat had been replaced by the clean fragrance of justice finally arriving. Tomorrow night, the monster would finally be caged. But first, she had to walk into our trap one last time. Thursday night, 7 o'clock, the Woodland Park Community Center buzzed with more energy than a small-town election. Word had distributed about the property rights meeting, and the place was packed with over 200 residents, plus media crews from 3 Denver TV stations. The scent of burnt coffee from the volunteer concession stand, mixed with nervous sweat and anticipation as individuals, filled every folding chair and lined the walls. I sat in the back row, FBI agents positioned strategically throughout the crowd. Agent Martinez had briefed me on the plan. Let Brenda execute her victim act, then systematically destroy her lies with evidence. The objective wasn't just confession, it was complete public humiliation that would make any jury conviction inevitable. At 7:15, Brenda made her entrance. She arrived in a wheelchair apparently. Her disability had progressed overnight, pushed by Tyler, who was doing his best to appear like a devoted son instead of an accessory to murder. Madison followed behind, clutching a tissue box and wearing the kind of tragic expression that belonged in a high school drama production. Brenda had outdone herself with the costume, neck brace, arm sling, oxygen tank beside her wheelchair. She appeared like she'd been hit by a truck instead of exposed as a serial killer. The crowd murmured sympathetically as Tyler wheeled her to the front of the room. Several individuals I recognized from her Facebook propaganda actually applauded her courage for attending, despite her injuries. Mayor Patterson called the meeting to order. We're here tonight to discuss property rights and tenant protections in our community. Mrs. Hutchins has requested to speak first. Brenda's execution was Academy Award caliber. Thank you all for coming, she stated in a voice barely above a whisper, amplified by the wireless microphone clipped to her hospital gown. I'm here despite my physician's orders because I need this community to understand what's occurring to vulnerable families in our town. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue. My children and I have called Harold Brennan's cabin our residence for over a year. We maintained Harold in his final days, maintained his land, honored his memory by keeping his residence filled with love. The crowd was consuming it. Several individuals nodded knowingly, shooting angry glances in my direction. Now, a corporate investor has purchased our residence and desires to throw us onto the streets. When I attempted to explain our circumstances, he became violent. He's destroyed our land, threatened my children, and terrorized our family. Tyler stepped forward on cue. This man has made our existences hell. Mom's health has gotten worse because of the stress. We just desire to reside in peace. That's when I stood up. Mrs. Hutchins, I stated loudly enough for everyone to hear. Would you mind explaining to everyone how you knew Harold Brennan? The color drained from her face, but she recovered quickly. Harold was like family to us. I was his caretaker during his illness. What illness specifically? He had dementia. Couldn't take care of himself. I walked to the front of the room, every eye in the place following me. That's interesting, because Harold's medical records display no diagnosis of dementia. Would you like to see them? Agent Martinez stood up from the audience, badge clearly visible, FBI Special Agent Sarah Martinez. Mrs. Hutch, you're under federal investigation for the murder of Harold Brennan. The room erupted, gasps, shouts, individuals turning to their neighbors in disbelief. Brenda's theatrical composure cracked for just a moment before snapping back into position. This is harassment, she shrieked. They're attempting to silence me because I'm exposing their corruption. That's when Fletcher Brennan stood up from his seat in the middle section. My name is Fletcher Brennan. Harold was my uncle. The room went dead silent. Fletcher walked to the front, his voice carrying the weight of 2 years of grief and investigation. Harold Brennan was murdered by this woman for his life insurance money. She poisoned him slowly while stealing his land and isolating him from his family. Brenda's mask finally slipped completely. That's a lie. Harold passed of natural causes. I have the death certificate. You forged the death certificate, Agent Martinez stated, stepping forward with a folder of documentation. Just like you forged Harold's signature on the insurance beneficiary change. Just like you forged his power of attorney documentation, the local TV news cameras were capturing every word as Brenda's carefully constructed house of lies collapsed in real time. Harold never had dementia, Fletcher continued, his voice breaking with emotion. He was healthy and sharp until you started poisoning him. I have photos displaying his decline, bank records displaying you stealing his money, and recordings of you confessing to his murder. That's when Brenda made her final fatal mistake. He deserved it, she screamed, jumping up from her wheelchair in perfect health. That stupid elderly man was wasting his money. I put him out of his misery and made better use of his assets. The community center erupted as Brenda realized what she'd just admitted on live television. Agent Martinez smiled grimly and pulled out her handcuffs. Brenda Hutchins, you're under arrest for the murder of Harold Brennan and conspiracy to commit murder against Jake Morrison. As the cuffs clicked into position, the crowd broke into spontaneous applause. Justice finally had arrived. 6 months later, I'm sitting on my front porch, watching sunrise paint the Colorado peaks gold and pink, sipping coffee that tastes like victory and breathing mountain atmosphere finally clean of lies. The sentencing hearing was everything I'd hoped for. Judge Patricia Hawkins looked Brenda directly in the eyes as she delivered the verdict. Life without possibility of parole for 4 counts of first-degree murder, plus 40 years for federal fraud charges. You will pass in prison, Mrs. Hutchins, which is more mercy than you displayed your victims. Brenda had attempted one final execution, asserting mental illness and childhood trauma, but the jury saw right through her act. 12 minutes of deliberation. Guilty on all counts. Tyler received 8 years for property destruction and conspiracy. He'll probably serve 4 with good behavior, assuming he stays off the meth. Madison testified against her mother with courage that brought tears to the courtroom, then was placed with loving relatives in Texas, where she's thriving in school and therapy. But the actual victory was what occurred to our community afterward. The weekend following Brenda's conviction, something magical occurred. Over 60 neighbors appeared at my cabin with tools, materials, and casseroles, ready to erase every trace of Tyler's destruction. The scent of sawdust mixed with barbecue smoke and genuine human kindness filled the mountain atmosphere. Frank, from Murphy's Hardware, donated replacement lumber. Lisa Rodriguez organized volunteer meals that lasted for days. Even Deputy Rick Morrison, red-faced with embarrassment about enabling Brenda, worked alongside me installing new windows. I should have trusted you from day one, he admitted, sweat beading on his forehead as we lifted a heavy frame into position. She manipulated me like a master puppeteer. Miguel and I launched Mountain Honest Contracting, specializing in helping fraud victims rebuild their properties and existences. Our mission statement, honest work for honest individuals, because everyone deserves a second chance at residence. The most unexpected blessing was Rosemary. Those late nights building legal cases turned into early morning coffee conversations about existence, loss, and second chances. Her brilliant legal mind was matched only by her compassionate heart, and her jasmine tea had been replaced by shared sunrises on my porch. You realize you're famous now, she stated, settling beside me with her laptop. 5 more interview requests yesterday. Plus, someone desires to make a Netflix documentary. My narrative had gone viral. Separated contractor exposes serial killer. But more importantly, it became a blueprint for other fraud victims to recognize and fight similar schemes. The FBI used our case in training seminars nationwide. The Harold Brennan Memorial Fund became our crowning achievement. Using recovered insurance money and donations from supporters across America, we created the Mountain Elder Protection Initiative, serving all of rural Colorado. Sheriff's departments now receive mandatory elder abuse training. Senior centers implement buddy systems, preventing isolation. Banks flag suspicious account changes involving elderly customers. Local hospitals screen for signs of financial exploitation during admissions. Harold's murder had been transformed into a shield protecting countless other potential victims. Fletcher moved to Colorado permanently, purchasing a small cabin 5 miles up the mountain. Uncle Harold's spirit can finally rest, he told me while fishing at our new memorial pond. His death stopped a monster and saved existences. My property value increased from $12,000 to over $100,000, but its actual worth was immeasurable. Monthly community barbecue, winter storytelling nights around the fireplace, summer camping trips for local kids whose families couldn't afford vacations. Harold's residence had become a gathering place for healing. The final redemption came last month when Madison contacted from Texas. "Jake, I desired to thank you for never giving up," she stated, her voice strong and clear. "If you'd walked away like Mom expected, she would have kept killing individuals. You saved existences by fighting back." She's planning to study criminal justice and help other victims of family trauma. Brenda's poison hadn't destroyed her daughter's future after all, as morning sun climbs higher over the peaks. I think about that initial shocking encounter with the woman in athletic wear who thought she could steal my fresh start. The taste of true justice isn't sweet, it's clean and pure, like mountain atmosphere after a cleansing storm. The cabin stands solid now, filled with love instead of lies, protected by community instead of isolated by predators. Every sunrise reminds me that good individuals, united, can defeat any evil. Drop a response below with your own property scheme or HOA nightmare narrative. Let's help each other recognize these predators before they strike. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell for Karen's narratives. Because unfortunately, monsters like Brenda are everywhere, but together we can stop them all. Share this with anyone purchasing repossessed properties or dealing with suspicious squatters.